Today's title is called How to Change Suicidal Tendencies to Life-Giving Tendencies. That's right, actually changing suicidal tendencies to life-giving tendencies. Part of the picture I'm going to talk about, it will sound initially a little gloomy, but that's just to kind of go through some of the literature. But I have to say that we're going to be moving towards life-giving tendencies, and we're going to actually look at it from the point of view of radiant vitality and respectfully real approaches. So this is a very different treatment of suicidal tendencies than you've ever heard. What are some of the risk factors for whether somebody is likely to commit suicide? If they're schizophrenic, that's one of the risk factors. For instance, somebody might be hearing voices telling them to kill themselves. It happens. Or they may be hearing voices that are obscene. They get sick and tired, and the only way they can think of stopping that voice is to take their lives. So schizophrenia creates more of a poor prognosis for actually committing suicide. Clinical depression, like major depression, isn't just depression, being down or the blues, but really clinically depressed. There are many symptoms of clinical depression, such as failure to enjoy life, loss of interest, often either insomnia or oversleeping, pessimistic towards the future, highly irritable, either weight gain or weight loss, and suicidal ideation. Person has suicidal thoughts. Now, suicidal thoughts are normal. We're talking about, which it creates a tendency, but most people have suicidal thoughts at some time in their lives. But we're talking also here about actual suicides. If somebody's clinically depressed, major depression, they're at higher risk. If they've made a prior attempt, some people, there's a myth that if a person's tried once and they didn't succeed, they're not going to do it again. That's not true. 10% of people who made a prior attempt will actually at some point kill themselves. Now, a very big factor, huge, predispose somebody to actually committing suicide is alcohol. Drugs as well, but alcohol more so. Many suicides are associated with drinking of alcohol. It lowers the inhibitions to act drastically. Issues become out of perspective, exaggerated, person overreacts to it. Now keep in mind there are three classes of suicide and of suicide attempts. Class 1 is planned and they're highly successful. Person's dead. They plan it out, they make their plans, they may even write a will and why they're doing it. There could be a note, often there's not a note. But it's a planned suicide. Maybe the person was in a lot of pain, many reasons. That's class 1. Class 2 is impulsive. Person gets upset, they're angry, they're upset about something, and they make an attempt. They're less likely to die from it. They can die from it. They may get really upset, have an argument with somebody, jump off a bridge, jump in front of a car, but better chance of surviving. Then the third class of suicide attempts is cry for help. Person overdoses, but they do it with a lot of people around so they can get their stomach pumped. It's a cry for help. But sometimes they die. They didn't really totally want to die, but sometimes they die inadvertently. So these are some of the three classes of suicide. Now, what are some of the 4 factors, that practical factors that often prevents somebody? For a religious person, fear of God and knowing he forbids suicide will keep some people alive. They'll say, well, God forbids this. I really don't want to be here, but God doesn't want me to do it. I'm going to stay. This only applies to some people who have a strong belief in God and the love of God and the fear of God. Keep some people alive. Number 2, person might fear that they won't succeed and become disabled. And that happens. There are suicide attempts. A person is in really bad shape afterwards when they survive. They might be paralyzed, many disabilities if a person survives. And they can survive whatever, whether it's poisoning or even gunshot. Now they also, number 3, they can have a fear of hurting themselves. If you ask somebody to inject something in themselves, whether it's insulin or any kind of injection of B12, a lot of people just can't do it. There's a natural fear of just hurting yourself. So there are people who won't do it because they don't want to hurt themselves.